Okay, welcome everybody. Can you hear okay? Yes, excellent. There was a one-sheet handout to which we shall eventually arrive. What are you trying to figure out? It's a new thing that Rabbi has, and you strike underneath. So,
She's had some challenges with lighting.
so it being the second night of Hanukkah, Chag Urim Sameach to everybody, a happy, joyful Festival of Lights, which is the official name of what we're doing. And Lori and I are going to lead the blessings for the second night, which are only two, right? Shachianu was for last evening, but we'll just chant the first two. Oh, wait, I've got more resources here. This is great. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. It's really beautiful. What's more beautiful than the Hanukkah lights? I don't know. Well, your faces, your spirits. And our topic for tonight's pretty beautiful. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the wonder of music. That's such a broad topic. It could go almost any direction. But what we announced was that, and I should say welcome, by the way, to everybody and to anybody who's with us on streaming. We announced that we were going to explore an essay by Rabbi Heschel called The Vocation of the Cantor, and that is exactly what we're going to do. This essay was published in a book called The Insecurity of Freedom, dated 1966, and in that essay, Rabbi Heschel posits the only language that seems to be compatible with the wonder and mystery of being is the language of music, end quote. And so we're going to explore a little bit of his conceptual argumentation behind this assertion. We're going to listen to and comment on some music, and we'll have a chance to be very attentive to how the interpretation of text of the liturgical word of sacred sound is a central tenet of Heschel's thinking about the musical language of prayer, because what he's really doing is teaching about how music invites us into, guides us through, and delivers us into a fuller understanding of what it means to pray, and how the words of the Siddur and the Machzor come to life. And don't let me forget at the very end to circle back to the theme of light, which is one that Heschel signifies in this essay in a very important way. So Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel was born in 1907. He came from a long line of eminent scholars in the Polish tradition, in the Hasidic tradition, with ancestors who were important teachers of Hasidism and of Torah, and had a very, abundant and yet challenging life with lots of loss. He was educated in Germany, eventually had to flee, was brought to the United States by the president of the time of the Hebrew Union College, Julius Morgenstern, who was able to bring a number of very important scholars out from out from Eastern Europe just in time, among whom Heschel was one, and Heschel taught in Cincinnati at HUC for a while, and then became a very important fixture at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City, but also in the 60s, an ally of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and is famously pictured marching with Dr. King in the South during the civil rights era, so to speak, which continues to this day, and of course is a very, very famous 20th century theologian. So how many people have already encountered any of Heschel's thinking about music? Oh, good. Okay, so we have a little bit of experience with his thought about music, and for cantors, it's extremely central, not only because he was kind enough to title this The Vocation of the Cantor, but because in it he really strikes at the heart and soul of the cantorial vocation and its aspirations. So just as a word of caution, so you don't jump, there's a Bluetooth speaker over here that I'm going to use to play music, and it goes for a little while, and then it turns itself off to save power. And when it does, it's going to say something. And so if it turns itself off, it'll be loud, and we'll all go, "Oh, the angel of bows has manifested in Skokie tonight." So I apologize for that. I'll try to get to the music before that happens, but it could happen. Don't be alarmed. It's just technology. So, so in any case, let's hear a little bit of Heschel's actual words in which he contextualizes the teaching that we're going to hear tonight. As I say, the essay was published in 1966, and although it seems to be content specific to the cantorate, the article is really a treatise on prayer and has to do with the relationship of the congregation to God as expressed through music. The relationship of the congregation to God, inner, outer, everywhere God, as expressed through music. And as I said, the interest of this material to cantors is based on its exploration of music's profound importance in public worship and the cantor's role as the interlocutor, so to speak, between God and the congregation, drawing each toward the other. That is, gathering together the sparks of the congregation in prayer and uniting us in voice, and also bringing into our consciousness the presence of God, whether we experience that as an inner presence or as an all-surrounding presence, or both. So for all of us, this essay offers a provocative call to engage in mindful, fervent, and fully conscious prayer. So I'll read a little bit from a general section of the essay, and we'll get an idea what it's about, and then we'll move specifically into the musical part of the dissertation. So this is an actual quotation. So, quote, "We have adopted the habit of believing that the world is a spiritual vacuum, whereas the seraphim proclaim that Melochol haaretz kvodo, the whole earth is full of God's glory." So this comes from Isaiah, and you might associate it with the Kedusha prayer in the morning service, which is the prayer of which we're going to hear music tonight. And he says, how can it be that the seraphim say that everything is filled with God's glory, but sometimes we're not aware of the presence of the spiritual? And he goes on, how do the seraphim declare it? How, now he actually makes another citation from the Psalms. The heavens declare the glory of God. And he says, how can the heavens declare God's glory? How do the heavens reveal God's glory? And he quotes another scriptural passage. There is no speech, there are no words, neither is their voice heard, ending the quote. And he's saying, the heavens don't have a voice, and so how is it that they can possibly declare God's glory, which is inaudible, he says. He says, it is the task of humankind to reveal what is concealed. It is the task of humankind to be the voice of the glory, to sing its silence, to utter, so to speak, what is in the heart of all things. The glory, the presence, is here, invisible and silent. Humanity is the voice. Our task is to be the song. The cosmos is a congregation in need of a cantor. It's good, right? But the cantor is not Cantor Richard Cohn or cantor, name your cantors whom you know. The cantor is humanity. So the raising of our voices as a community is the cantor refracting into sound the silent wonder of the cosmos. Refracting into sound the silent wonder of the cosmos. And composers, orchestras, choruses are all different instrumentations through which that voice is heard. He says, what ear has ever heard how all trees sing to God? Has our reason ever thought of calling upon the sun to praise the one? And yet, what the ear fails to perceive, what reason fails to conceive, our prayer makes clear to our souls. It is a higher truth to be grasped by the Spirit. All your works shall give you thanks, Adonai, again quoting Psalms. He says, wherever there is life, there is silent worship. He says, the world is always on the verge of becoming one, echad, in adoration of God. And it is humanity who is the cantor of the universe, and in whose life the secret of cosmic prayer is disclosed. He says, to sing means to sense and to affirm that the Spirit is real and that its glory is present. In singing, we perceive what is otherwise beyond perceiving. Song, and particularly liturgical song, is not only an act of expression, but also a way of bringing down the Spirit from heaven to earth. And he makes a point. The numerical value of the letters which constitute the word shira, song, is equal to the numerical value of the word tefillah. Oh, you like that too. All right, so that's two big ahs so far tonight. So this is Hebrew numerology or gematria. So the word shira, the word for song or for poetry, is shin 300, yud 10, resh 200, hey 5. So that makes 300 and 200 is 500, and yud is 10, and hey is 5, and that's 515.
Hi, Eric Mobile. Disconnected.
See, I told you. I'll speak with you later. So, all right, so 515. Tefillah is Toth, 400, Peh, 80, Lamed, 30, Hey, 5. So that's 480 plus 30 is 510 plus 5 is 515. So what is this connection again? Shirah, song, tefillah are entirely synonymous from a Hebrew-rooted perception. And so he says, prayer is song. Sing to God, chant to God, meditate about all the wonders, about the mystery that surrounds us. The wonder defies all descriptions. The mystery surpasses the limits of expression. The only language that seems to be compatible with the wonder and mystery of being is the language of music. Music is more than just expressiveness. It is rather a reaching out toward a realm that lies beyond the reach of verbal propositions. Verbal expression is in danger of being taken literally and of serving as a substitute for insight. An over-reliance on words leads us away from insight and toward what he's going to say is even something more strong. He says, words become slogans, slogans become idols. But music is a refutation of human finality, that is, boundariedness. He says, music is an antidote to higher idolatry. So as we listen to some music tonight, And we listen to how it interprets words, which is going to be the paradox here, because what Heschel is going to go on to say is it's all about the words, but not in a way that limits them, and only by virtue of music. That to become fixated within the words without the music is to miss the essence and no longer be able to reach the connection between the silent and the sounded. Right? In order to understand the connection between the silent and the sounded, and to have the resonance and the vibrational quality of the cosmos come to life in song, you have to invest music into these words. Is this making sense so far? Any questions or comments about this? Yes?
I was just thinking that when music is really sublime to you, it's ineffable, and that's what he seems to be saying.
When music is sublime to you, it's ineffable, meaning
That it's beyond, everyday, it's something you can't evoke or express. It's something that transcends everyday.
something that transcends the everyday. So this is going to lead us to a dilemma tonight, because I'm going to play music and I'm going to ask you to comment on it, and then we're going to be confining it again. so it's super interesting. Any other comments or questions about this? Music of the spheres, beautiful. That's exact, or the spheroid in this case. We'll come back to that. Yes.
This is premature, but you're going to play some music.
I am.
And I superficially looked at the article, and what struck me was which melody is chosen to represent this, and I think he focused on New Side. That a lot of, when he wrote this in the 60s, a lot of these newer melodies.
So the comment is on traditional. Actually, the piece I'm going to play is not a traditional piece, but it is true that in the article, Heschel, commends to us the importance of traditional Jewish sounds in conveying the essence and the quality of the text. Thank you. That's exactly true. I think there was maybe one more comment. Oh, I think angels speak all the time. So, yes. They do, but when do and how do we hear it? That's yes. No, I agree. So, all right. So, and just to go to your point, so the music. You have this page that says kedusha, so you already know that I'm going to focus on the sanctification in which the words of the seraphim speaking to each other, exactly as you say, are heard in the setting of the liturgy. There's also a section of the Yotzer prayer in the morning service, the prayer of light, since we're focusing on light tonight in certain respects, that's called the Kedusha de Yotzer, the Kedusha that belongs to the Yotzer, and in Reform liturgy it's been cut out. But in traditional liturgy, in the prayer of light, there's a section that does call out all those different angelic presences that sing and that make sound. And that would be a whole study unto itself. So maybe we'll look at that some other time. That's really great. Okay, so, all right, so as a prelude, I know this thing's going to shut down, sorry. And we'll start it back up again. So as a prelude to listening, and I have to keep an eye on the time, let me now read you some of the specific comments about music and see. The purpose of reading these is to frame our listening, so that we have a sense of what it is we're listening for as we try to understand how humanity channels the ineffable into something that we can experience in a vibration we can hear, and in all the complexity of music with harmony and rhythm and melody and form all intermingling in a way that only music can do. So, all right, so Heschel says cantorial music, because that's his focus, is first of all music in service of the liturgical word. in service of the word, not to limit the word, but in service of the word. He says, the disengagement of cantoral music from the liturgical word is singing in a way which contradicts the words. So he's concerned about whether cantors, choirs, congregations might be moving in a direction in which the word is not being served in a way truthfully. That the meaning of the word, the intention of the word, the context from which the word comes, the Hebraic quality of the word, the sounds of the word are somehow being betrayed as music diverts from this kind of deep understanding. You familiar with the term depth theology? So that's also a Heschelian thing. So depth theology asserts that the theologies that we are taught are attempts to codify something deeper than those theologies, that in order to give expression to something that cannot be expressed, we impose on the non-expressible a theology that we put into concepts and words. So, but the depth theology means that the depth theology refers to the questions to which our theologies propose answers. And so I also think there's kind of a depth musicology, meaning music proposes answers to questions that, you know, cannot be understood directly. So, sorry that I'm going all over the place here. But Heschel says, the separation of music from the word may indeed foster a spirituality without a commitment. If you're fully committed to what these words express, then the music with which you encounter them has to reflect that commitment. He goes on. A sentence without a tone, without a musical quality, is like a body without a soul. And you know, we're taught that chanting Torah, for example, is an aspirational essential, right? That to hear the Torah chanted is actually the Torah itself in the chant. So he says, the sentence without a tone or without a musical quality is like a body without a soul. And then he goes on to say, one is shocked to hear how magnificent thoughts are uttered in a false tone, and sublime words have crude melodies. And now he's being judgmental, right, about certain kinds of emerging musics. But okay. He says, a word has a soul, and we must learn how to attain insight into its life. A word has a soul, and we must learn to attain insight into its life. So a liturgical revival, that is the revival of liturgical experience, by which he means continuous revival, will involve a new insight into the meaning of the liturgical words, as well as an intimate way of uttering and appropriating the words. So he goes on and says that even though music is extremely great, the medium in which God's guidance has been conveyed to us is the Word. And all we have are the words in the liturgy, sorry about that, and the reverence in our hearts. The words, the reverence or the awe. But even these two can be often apart from each other, and it is the task of music to bring those together. So when we listen to this music, we want to understand how the reverence in one's heart and the words in the liturgy are being connected. He goes on, the cantor must teach others how to attach themselves to the words of the liturgy. He says, words die of routine. A cantor is a person who knows the secret of the resurrection of the words. Well, and the question is, what does that mean? So, it means that every time you come to the word, you encounter it as if it's completely new, while you're also understanding it in its historical resonance as something very old. I think that's what that means. And so there's an immediate, in the moment, like you could sing the same melody 1,000 times, and it should feel as if it's brand new every time there's something in it that resurrects the word in that moment. So, okay, so now let's get to some actual music. So what we're going to be listening to is a setting of the Kedusha as rendered here. There are many different variations of the text for the Kedusha, which is the third benediction of the Amidah, and in the morning, under certain circumstances, and especially in Reform worship, takes on the form that you see on this page. So you see in italics the Hebrew words transliterated in Ashkenazic pronunciation, because the music we're going to be hearing is in the Ashkenazic pronunciation. So if that's, for some of us, that's, oh yeah, that's the way we grew up. And for some of us, you may not have ever heard that before, right? That the, what is often an ah in the way we pronounce Hebrew is an oh instead of an ah. And sometimes words that we're used to having a t have a s. Like, anyway, you get the b'mitzvah sov would be an example of that. So, so what we're going to do is listen to this music reflecting on these teachings about the manifestation of the divine from silence to sound in the fulfillment of words through music. So what I'm going to invite you to do is, as we listen the first time through to this music, follow along. You should be able to kind of know where you are, and listen from the point of view of revelation. What is being revealed that was concealed in these words through the music of this particular composer, who in this case happens to be Ernest Bloch. So Ernest Bloch wrote a piece called Avodat HaKodesh, a sacred service, around about the early 1930s. Bloch was born in about 1880 in Switzerland, migrated to the United States, lived in various places around this country and taught in various conservatories, was an important figure here. Went on retreat in Switzerland in the early 1930s, during which he composed this interpretation of the Reform liturgy with orchestra, cantor, and chorus. So it's a very kind of, it's one of the very few works of its kind in which the Jewish liturgy is expressed with the same ensemble as the settings of the masses or the requia or all kinds of other, liturgical music that's not from our tradition. So in that respect, it's unusual. But I'm using it tonight to demonstrate and ask you to listen to and explicate what's being revealed about this text through this music. And then we'll hear a couple settings of the Kedusha that are more familiar to us. But this one may be really unfamiliar. And it is both very soft and very loud, so don't be surprised about that. I'm going to reset this, and it's going to speak to us, so I apologize for that. So now it's going to tell us it's turning on, and its power is whatever percent it is.
Battery, 100%.
100%, okay.
Connecting to Network Mobile. Network Mobile. Connected.
Connected, okay. All right, so we're going to listen through without interruption. It's about 4 minutes and 53 seconds. And see if you can keep your place. If you're at home and you registered, then we sent you a link with the text. If not, we'll go through it after we hear it, and you'll understand a little bit better what's happening. So this is a performance involving cantor Richard Cohn and an orchestra conducted by Thomas Wickman, which we offered at North Shore Congregation Israel some number of years ago, with a choral ensemble composed of leading Chicago area singers. And it's kind of fun to listen, for me to listen back. I don't know how you'll feel about it. So without further comment, and remembering kind of the keynotes of this of this sharing tonight. What is Heschel getting at? How the ineffable, how the inaudible, how the cosmic, how the transcendent and the immanent are somehow transformed through sound into meaning. So there. Okay, so here it is. Okay. So how many was this a first hearing of this piece? Oh, a lot for a lot of people. Okay, this is like the nth degree of interpreting this text. That's why I wanted to play it, not just because it's fun to listen back, but because it represents something. So a few comments, and then I want to go back through and we'll listen and explore it together. So one thing that's really important about this approach to this text is that as it's laid out on the page in front of you, and I apologize for not having the Hebrew text on the page, it just ran out of time. So the music actually unfolds from section to section of the text, not with dramatic boundaries, but like it unfolds out of itself. But you know that first you're here, and then you're here, and then you're here, and then you're here, and then you're here. So it's not like the same music again and again, but rather music that's specific to the opening of the prayer, and then the next stage, and then the next stage, and then the next stage, and the next stage. The other thing that happens that's really cool that I just noticed is that the agency of who owns the prayer, so to speak, who's expressing it, is gradually transferred from the cantor to the community. The choir represents the community, all right? So like when you come and hear our wonderful choir, it's a what do you call that? I'm just too tired. I mean, Shireno, for example, here at TBI is a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? We have a community. Every voice in our community matters. When Shirenu sings, it's expressing through the voices of those, you know, who volunteer for that ministry, so to speak, that activity, the whole of the congregation. And in all these kinds of pieces, Jewish pieces with choir, the choir really represents the communal. Or I think about the 12 tribes. It represents the entire body of the Jewish, the Israelite people from the beginning until now, all as it were standing at Sinai together. So what happens in this Kedusha is you actually can feel it move away from the solo voice and totally into the communal voice. And I'll show you how that works. But first reactions, if any, to this music as an expression of this text. Go ahead.
I felt like I was 8 years old because I went to a synagogue on the south side when I was a kid in the 60s, and I felt like my dad was sitting right next to me, like next to the choir, because he was toned up and he would try to mimic the choir, and it just sounded the same style, the same exact tune, and I felt like I was a kid. I mean, I'm smiling the whole
Oh, you were you felt it took you back to childhood and
they didn't have any of the orchestration, but we had, it was the same tune,
the same essence is what you're getting at. Yes.
yes.
Even though this piece is not based on Jewish modes. Yeah, go ahead.
I was taken immediately by the angels came in. I mean, that was just it was the angels. I mean, it was just there was
Something about it. Well, they speak in different, we're going to go back through. They speak in different ways at different times. Right, the first kadosh, 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 you know, creates this kind of seraphim thing that we were talking about before. But then they speak differently when they say that the entire world is full of God's kavod, God's presence or glory. And then by the time that the piece ends, the angels are the whole community singing Yimloch, Adonai, you know, God, the godliness will transcend everything that happens, is what this liturgy says. Go ahead.
You already mentioned, I was to say this doesn't, a lot of this music is very Jewish sounding.
Sounding, right, even though it's
But what I noticed a lot of the change in the instrumentation, there was the part where I think it was brass came in, it sounded to me like a shofar, and more percussion. It sounded to me like the tempo was even, as it was going into the Yimloch Adonai, like it sounded like it was accelerating the tempo. I mean, the whole
Yes, that does happen. It's exactly true. But I want to come back to what's happening with the words, because remember, we have this interesting phenomenon in Heschel that it's all about transmitting the words, but it's not about the words. Go ahead.
Had hu Eloheinu, that verse occurs twice. The first time, I felt like they were yelling at me. They were sort of being, I don't know, like
Okay.
lecturing.
It's
And
just-
the second time it sung, it was elevated.
So Nina has very sharp ears on this one because, and we'll see it when we go back through, we'll hear it. At first, there's this kind of standing at Sinai, da 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 da, like the thunder and the lightning and the cascades and so forth, and then when it repeats, it shifts into this kind of universal warm thing. Bloch thought of this as a universalistic piece and not as a specifically only Judaic piece. So that's good. Yes. And this is so much fun. Sorry to the people online. I can't read back everything everybody says. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
And the same thing, we're talking about words, generation to generation, Lador Vador, again and again and again, it kept
This
repeating
is so good.
constantly to give us a feeling of multiple generations throughout.
This is such Torah study. Lador vador, lador vador, lador vador, lador vador, yimloch, and suddenly the yimloch comes back. This is how music can be especially interesting. Just one more comment, and then let's listen again.
Well, overall, there's a feeling, sort of like a river or a funnel where the words and the sounds and everything are sort of merging, and certain things, become emphasized. It's like waves rising, but there's like a alchemy there. There's like an intermingling.
An alchemy or an intermingling, yes, and you'll actually hear it, certain words in music, right? This is a phenomenon. You can hear different words sounding at the same time.
And it's like a flaring, it's like waves coming in, and sometimes it goes up and it's a crescendo and then it goes down, but it's like an intermingling of everything.
Beautiful. So let's listen again with a little commentary, and I'll start and stop, and I apologize for that. But I loved all of these insights that you just gave. So this movement of the piece begins with the cantor, and I think of it as standing in humility right at the beginning of this movement, and not in so much. You remember the intimate. Heschel says there's an intimacy and then there's a grandeur, right? And they're both present. So at the beginning of this movement, and if you want to follow along from the top, there's this kind of unusual introduction, and then this very quiet beginning of sanctifying. We sanctify your name on earth, just exactly as the heavens proclaim your holiness. Now you can already notice that from the earthly to the heavenly, there's been a shift in the singing, right? It starts out, Nakadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, here I am. It's like Hineni on High Holy Days. Here I am, humble in spirit, standing before you. And then immediately as it moves towards the text about the heavens proclaiming God's holiness, the voice rises. So let's just listen to that again for clarity. Let's see. We sanctify your name here on earth. Exactly as the heavens proclaim your holiness. And then in a somewhat chant fashion, this is the way your prophet expressed it. The one called to the other. It's a completely different tone. So the two seraphim face each other and call out. And what do they call out? Holy, holy, holy is Adonai of hosts. And then differently, full is the entire earth with God's glory, and then repeating God's glory. So I don't know if that was audible. Melo kol haaretz kavodo, kavodo, and then lifting up the kavod, lifting up the honor, lifting up the glory, lifting up the presence of God. Right, and then it comes back to the cantorial voice. Adir adirenu. Like the beginning, mighty one who sustains our might. Adonai, our ruler. How majestic is your name in all the earth. And then the response of the angelic voices. With kind of an exclamation, Baruch Kavod, Adonai Mim Komo. So in the previous section, right, it was Kadosh, 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 and so forth. Holy is God. The whole earth is filled with God's glory. And now in this moment, the Kavod Adonai, originates wherever the essence of God is found, Mim Komo, in the place from which God arises. And then there's this shift of energy, and it's almost like, this is in certain ways similar, the next part, to the Shema. And before we hear it, just to look at the words, Echad hu Eloheinu, one is our God, hu Ovinu, that God is both parent, hu Malkenu, and sovereign, like Avinu Malkenu, and hu Moshienu, who is the one who delivers us, who brings us out of danger, who brings us out of constriction into abundance. V'hu Yashmi'enu, and makes God's self known by sound. Barachamav, in the state of compassion. Le'enei kol chai, switching to the visual, in the sight of all the living. God becomes manifest through sound in the sight. There's another Torah passage you can think about. What is the one about seeing the voice and hearing the sights and so forth? I should have looked it up beforehand. But anyway, let's listen to this section. This is where it begins. Echad hu Eloheinu. One is our God. And the people respond with the same words. God is our parent. God is our sovereign. God delivers us. And God makes God's self heard in compassion so that everybody can see. So then, when everybody can see, the music changes. And this is what you were pointing out earlier. The same words, but now instead of Echad hu Eloheinu, in this exchange between the cantor and the choir, almost like Moses and the children of Israel or something like that, and like this scene kind of energetic interaction, there is this second presentation of the same. God is our parent, and underneath it says God is our sovereign, and then God is our deliverer. And to bring it out, there are two soloists who sing God is Moshi'enu, the one who delivers us. And then with excitement, God will make God's self heard to us with compassion. now with complete confidence in the sight of all the living. And what will the living understand from that? That the sovereignty of God is eternal. Through the repetitions expressing that eternity. People of Zion, your God is from generation to generation. Lador, Vador, Lador, Vador, Lador, Vador, in a new key. God will reign, God will reign, and then all happens again. Generation to generation, and finally, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise God. And a very grand conclusion to that movement. Yes.
Very much like Puccini, who must have been a secret Jew.
Oh wow, Puccini. Puccini gets a sound out. It's the secret Jewish life of Puccini. Okay.
It's triumphant, it's so exalted, it's so energizing. It's like lifting you up. It's exactly what the words are saying. But it just buoys you up.
So yes, I agree. So now that we've gone through it again with a little commentary, anything else you want to add, and then we'll hear a couple more familiar settings of the same text. Yes. You weren't so sure. Interesting. And I think there is a unity about the way that this movement ends. You remember the teaching in Heschel that I mentioned, that all things are tending toward unity, right? That the arc of history tends toward unity. That's why we say at the end of every service, Bayom Hahu Yihi Adonai Echad U'Shmo Echad. When we get there, God will be one, God's name will be one, everything that exists will be in a state of unity. And what Heschel is positing is that music is the vehicle might be one word, or that, that somehow music could be the environment within which that unification takes place. But of course, you have to also act in the world and walk your justice the same way that Heschel walked justice, if you want that to happen. So, okay. So thank you for being patient with that kind of lengthy exposition. But, I kind of want to test out before I share other music. Does this illuminate a little bit what I think Heschel is getting at when he demands integrity to the way the text is being expressed through music? Does that make sense? In other words, in detail, with intentionality, and then it transcends the words themselves. But in the process of transcending the words, it is attentive to every detail of how the words and how the words relate to each other. But let's take a different kedusha. See if you recognize this one. She's going to make a loud noise, but I'm going to turn this off so that she doesn't interrupt us. Oh, That was very subtle. Okay, let me turn the piano on, because it also shuts itself down. We have all these things that control themselves. So see if you recognize this one. Nekadesh, Nekadesh. You can look at your paper. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam. Kashem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom. ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. Recognizes this one. Most of us recognize this one. Where have you heard this before? Oh, it goes back for Shabbat to you also? But now we associate with High Holy Days, but you're right, it wasn't always a High Holy Days. In fact, it's not so much a High Holy Days piece, but the Reform practice is to bring these majestic pieces right into High Holy Days more often than we bring them into Shabbat. This is a little bit of a step down majestic from the one we just heard with the orchestra, but also similar in certain ways, right? And I don't know if Bloch knew this music, which is older. Nekadesh has a very similar approach, right, where the cantor begins as if quietly at a distance and so forth, and then it gradually increases in intensity until you finally get the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And what's happening there, Kadosh is holy. And if you listen carefully to the way it's set, you have a chord, Ka. So to talk, I don't know if I would call that dissonance, but on the Dosh is an expressive harmony, and then another chord, Ka, Dosh, another expressive harmony, lifting higher and higher, just as you go up on your toes, higher and higher, right? And the third one, a chord and then another expressive harmony, Adonai. Listen to that. God, who is expressed in so many ways. Then filled is the whole earth with God's kavod. God's glory, God's presence, God's honoring God's self. And then Adir, Adirenu, Adir, Adir, da, 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 da. We've all heard this many, many times, right? But look at your page. I almost wish we could run super titles, that would take away from it maybe. But do you know what I mean? It's like, when you know what's really happening in the text as you hear the music, it's a mind-opening experience, right? So this whole section of Adir Adirenu, that, God is so completely majestic and transformative, challenges composers all the time how to deal with it, But then eventually, when the response comes, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo, blessed is the presence of God that arises from the place from which it comes. Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo. And then when it gets to one is our God, Echad Hu Eloheinu, one is our God. God is our parent. God is our sovereign. God God is the one who will deliver us. Then, very similarly to the other piece, when it gets to God will make God's self heard, like this word Shema right to here. Vehu yashmienu, vehu yashmienu, vehu yashmienu. 3 times, just like the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. God will make God's self heard. God will make God's self heard. God will make God's self heard. If we haven't heard by now, we're not listening too carefully, right? But then in this case, with great compassion. Barachamav, in compassion. And then the cantor repeats, with compassion in the sight of all that lives, not just the people, but everything that lives. And then, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Ani, quoting, I am Adonai your God. Yimloch Adonai leolam Elohayich Tzion Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. So this version doesn't go along with the Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador. It's a little bit more congregational, you know, it's less performative in that respect, but and a little more contained. So it's interesting to hear that music that we know so well with the text in front of us, with the translation, and think about what's going on there. So now, what are we used to in Minyan, for example, or on Saturday mornings? We're used to Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad nevi'echa V'kara ze el ze ve'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot. Now, when that music was first written, it was performed not like that. We've made it more sacred sounding in a way. It was originally more like Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai. It's a little more. I was at a cantors meeting in Chicago maybe 30-something years ago. The composer appeared, and one of the cantors, traditional cantors, said, "This is too tribal." And it happened, gosh, was it in this building, that meeting? No, I don't think that was in this building. Close by, though. So we've mellowed it out. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. It's much less detailed in its effort. It's very congregational because it's easy to sing, right? Say, but it's also angels.
That don't really have words, from what Heschel says, right? So it's a sound that doesn't need to attach to words because the meaning is there.
Beautiful. That's a sound that doesn't have to attach to words because the meaning is there. Somebody write that down. That's very good. So, and it's a more contemporary, although now it's, 40 years old or whatever, but it's a more contemporary and less ambitious, way of getting at it. Yes, you want to, and I'm.
I think the other way is also like, very full of spirit, ruach and everything for the time that it was. I mean, it's more schmaltzy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very schmaltzy. So let's hear yet another much more contemporary setting of this for comment. And this is by somebody called Ilana Arian, who is a very popular Jewish singer-songwriter, whom you may have, if you frequented, events of the URJ, the Union for Reform Judaism, you may have seen Ilana Arian. She used to be the violinist, guitarist on the Central Synagogue music team. She's on the faculty at HUC, where I was the director, and plays in our tefillah ensemble. And many, many, many places are now singing her kedusha. So, so it has a nigun. Lai 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 lai. Let's see if we can pick that up. You can try it with me. It goes lai 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 lai. Let's just do that much. Lai 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 lai, and then again lai 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 lai. Let's try it again. Lai 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 lai. Now hear the words. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי אני אדוני אלוהיכם ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור הללויה 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 hallelujah. So what do you notice about that piece? Very melodic. Yeah, I agree. What else do you notice about it? Yeah. Oh, you mean it has some resonance, or it has a little bit of a connection in its feeling tone to the one with which we're so familiar.
It's also very folky. There's a feeling almost like something you would hear at a folk festival, almost like Celtic, or I don't know, it's not that, but it just has that flowing quality.
Yeah, and a couple of people have mentioned rhythm. It has a kind of impulse of a certain kind. Yes.
It has a joyfulness to it and a singularity to it, like an individual walking through a meadow and speaking to his God.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. So, and you notice what happens. So this melody at the beginning, the ya la 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 ya la 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 la, it comes back in certain important moments, right, and anchors it. Kadosh, 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 or Meloch ol haaretz, or Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. But then, you know, like the other settings, when it gets into the part about Echad hu Eloheinu hu Avinu hu Malkeinu hu Moshienu hu Yashmienu, listen to what happens. So, you know, there's this kind of cantorial, or the leader's tune is ya da 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 dum, right, and the responding tune is the one that we were doing before. So when it gets to Echad Hu Eloheinu in the Ashkenazic, Echad Hu Eloheinu. So this sounds familiar. Hu Avinu, God is our parent. Hu Malkeinu, our sovereign. Hu Moshiach, the harmony changes, the one who will redeem us, and the one who will become known by God's voice. Barachamav, in compassion. Le'nei kol chai, in the perception, might be a better translation, of all living things. Ani Adonai Elohechem, right, is proclaimed as it is in the other pieces, and then back to the original tune, Yimloch Adonai Leolam, and even in the end, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. So very singable, and with this returning and turning again to that basic sound, but also that same kind of intensification that happens until God becomes revealed in compassion, in the perception of everything that lives, and we hear God say, Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am Adonai your God. So which is, of course, uses the same constituent words as the Shema and so forth and so on. So what I'm trying to do by kind of walking us through these four different versions of this same text is call into awareness the variety of ways in which our people continues to manifest this central prayer, in which we say that the essence of God is holiness. The essence of God is holiness. And I'm getting kind of a funny, interesting reaction to that. Like, that is really the truth. The essence of God is holiness. And it should be a powerful moment in whichever way of being the music comes. And whether, in blocks, tremendous kind of orchestral texture, or whether in that other piece is Lewandowski reinterpreted by Hugo Chaim Adler, that was the second one. The third one is Boni Ashur, and the fourth one is Ilana Arian. The journey of the Jewish people in finding within this prayer in each generation a way to express it that transcends the mundane and moves into the world of the heart is what I think Heschel is getting at in this whole treatise about how music is the thing that allows God to be heard and experienced among, right, not as only an outer phenomenon, but as an inner phenomenon, as a shared mutual phenomenon among people. And because I promised that I would do it, I want to read just one more thing that Heschel says. The task of one who prays is to kindle a light in the Word. This is a reinterpretation of a teaching by the Baal Shem Tov that we could have a whole other evening about sometime, which is about the Noah's Ark, because the word teva in Hebrew can mean ark or word or all kinds of containers. A word is a container for something. And the riff is that the Noah's Ark has three levels. And the Baal Shem Tov goes through this whole thing of explaining how the three levels interact with each other and ultimately cause the word to shine. I'm sorry that our candles have gone out, but they're never really out. You know what I mean. So that's right, the Ner Tamid. So the illumination of the words happens in sound. It's just such an interesting, juxtaposition, and is really, in the end, Heschel's point, right? That if Shirah equals tefillah, if song equals prayer, then the process of being in prayer is to reveal the light within the words, just as we reveal the light within these candles on each of the increasing nights of our Hanukkah observance. So I hope that's been interesting, you know, to kind of have some music together during this season. I hope we'll be doing that again Friday night. We'll be doing it one way or another Friday night. Won't go. I'm not going to go through the contingency plans right now. Just let's hope that we will, wherever we are Friday night, bring lots of light into the words, and hopefully we'll be here. So, Lori, I want to thank you for inviting me to do a little bit of sharing. And you know, I just really, Marcia and I love this community so much. And where else would you get together on a this is Monday, right? Monday night for soup and friendship and some Torah. So I grateful to everybody, and thanks John for putting us on to the stream. And I hope everybody stays safe as we move through this week, and be sure you have enough provisions and layers, just like Block's sacred service has many layers. So thank you all so much. Okay.